So Fox News just released this video with Ro Kahanna out of California um, on a lot of issues. I kind of do like Ro, um, but I haven't had a chance to watch this video in all of its entirety. So let's just, assume that I'm watching it for the first time through its entirety and give commentary as it goes.
I am not a Democrat in the form of what the Democratic Party has turned itself into, the national brand. Absolutely not. The brand got so bad. The D brand has been so maligned from the standpoint of it's toxic.
Retiring what?
I really just want to start off by saying fuck Joe Manchin. Um, he pretty much deprived hiring the minimum wage, infrastructure, um, helping single parents, tax credits for parents, and a lot of other things. But my biggest fault with him is definitely killing the much needed money that we need for infrastructure. I have opportunity as a semi truck driver. I get to see a lot of states. I get to see a lot of roads, to see a lot of bridges and ports, and a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with is literally stuff that was built during the Eisenhower, presidency or a little bit after. A lot of these roads have potholes the size of craters, size of the craters in the moon, and yeah, I'm not gonna spend too much on Joe Manchin, but unequivocally, fuck that nigga.
West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin with some tough talk for the Democrat Party as he wraps up a decades-long career as one of the strongest centrist voices in the upper chamber. Joining me now to react.
Centrist voice isn't even enough. He's really just a corporatist voice. Um, and hopefully, now that he's leaving, the people of West Virginia, seeming like they might be going more Republican, hopefully they grab them somebody who is truly America first, truly a populist. But we shall see.
California Congressman Ro Kahanna, welcome back. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I want to get to that because you have also been vocal about what the party needs to do as sort of some introspection post-election. But I got to get to you because you represent Silicon Valley on this H-1B visa issue that I talked about with Senator Schmidt. It's gotten really ugly on social media, and part of that has gotten into culture. I want to read part of what Vivek Ramaswamy posted on X in talking about this. He says that part of it comes down to the C-word culture. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. Well, Nikki Haley, former ambassador, responded to that saying there's nothing wrong with American workers or American culture. All you have to do is look at the border and see how many want what we have. We should be investing and prioritizing in Americans, not foreign workers. What do you
I somewhat disagree with her opening statement, but I 100% agree with her latter statement. Um, in certain areas, in certain demographics, in certain sub American cultures, there has been somewhat of a softism. Um, there has been somewhat of a easy mode, and the reality is, life isn't easy. Life is hard. Achievement is very difficult. Getting to the top of the mountain is a lot of work. And I do think that there is a subculture that is kind of somewhat growing in American culture that is kind of lost being tough, being hardworking, um, being excellent, being ambitious, being driven, um, and that ability to want to succeed by any means necessary. I do know that that part is still strong, especially when we look at the older generations. But in some of the younger generation, they are kind of pushing having soft hands. But I understand what they're saying, but you know, we just have to do better.
Do you make of this culture argument and the need to invest more in American workers, American students to make sure they are up to taking these jobs and there won't be as great a need to look overseas?
Well, American culture is extraordinary, and I respectfully disagree with Vivek. You know, I was a valedictorian in my high school, and they respected valedictorians and people who were exceptional at football and music. And what makes American culture extraordinary is that we celebrate the talent and genius and skills of people of diverse backgrounds. There's a reason that America leads in Nobel laureates in physics and in medicine and in chemistry. If there was some problem with the culture, we wouldn't be the world's greatest economy of 30 trillion. But one of the points that I think
Um, let's be honest. A lot of that 30 trillion is literally just the Federal Reserve printing trillions of dollars. We are literally roughly around $1 trillion every 100 days. So a lot of that 30 trillion isn't based on American productivity or based on what we are doing um, as small business owners, medium-sized business owners. It's really just um, we're just printing a shit ton of money. Money printer go brr. J Powell, got he pressing using these digis to press the digis. So it is what it is.
Elon and others are making is what makes America as exceptional is that we are a magnet for the world's talent. It's great that Elon Musk comes here. It's great that Jensen, who started NVIDIA, is doing it here and not in Taiwan. We made
NVIDIA to
a
the
mistake
moon.
when we lost Morris Chang,
Yeah,
who
we're
was
gonna
an
avoid a
immigrant
recession
here,
here.
educated at MIT. He leaves the United States, and guess what? He starts Taiwan Semiconductors, and now we don't have semiconductors in the United States. So we want the best talent coming here while reforming the abuses of the H-1B program.
So let's talk about that because critics will say these aren't always people with specialized genius level technology. There are people who are doing jobs that could go to Americans. Neil Patel of the Daily Caller wrote a really lengthy post. People can check it out on X. I'm just going to read part of it. He says that big tech is the only group that actually benefits here. It's not the foreign worker. It's not the American worker. He says the system keeps many of these workers in a legal limbo, often for decades. Workers tied down like this are less able to negotiate salary and benefits. That's the main reason big tech loves hiring H-1Bs. American workers who then have to compete with these foreign workers are thereby hurt by unfair labor conditions. He says the system is broken. It needs major.
And that is a true thing. I mean, there's reasons why we no longer have child labor. Um, there's reason why we no longer have, you know, um, a lot of these working conditions. There's a lot of reasons why we have the 40-hour work week, which we know, that might have worked, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but we see that, a lot of times now, you know, can't just live off one sole income. Husband goes to work, wife stay at home mom. Now then it became, the wife now has to work. Then now the dad has to pick up a second job, and now the mom and the dad both have second jobs and a side hustle. They gotta, you know, work during the day, sell plates at night, sell a little bit of crack, do hair on the side, mow a couple lawns. It's just, but the real issue is that when you look at these H-1B visas, um, it doesn't provide a pathway to citizenship. Um, a lot of these individuals that come here, they may be hardworking, but they are pretty much indentured servitudes, indentured indentured servants. My apologies. Um, they don't have the ability to bounce from job to job, such as someone as an American would. Um, if they do get fired, there's a high likelihood that they have to go back to their country of origin. So we do see that they are being exploited by big businesses, and because a lot of them are willing to work longer hours, receive less benefits, receive less wages, you know, they do provide competition to someone who's an American. I know that as an American, there is a certain mentality that a lot of us do have is, would you go pick, strawberries in a field in the Georgia heat in the middle of August for $8 an hour? Now, if I sat here and told you that I'd pay you 30, 40, $50 an hour, some of y'all would reconsider. Now, if I told you that I was pay you a living wage to the point where you could support all of your cost of living needs, be able to have, rent, mortgage, car payment, and, X, Y, and Z in exchange for you picking strawberries in the Georgia heat, a lot more people would agree. A lot more people would sign up. So, it's not that I know the big argument is that it's jobs that Americans don't want, but it's not necessarily that jobs that Americans don't want. A lot of times it's that the job that you're asking for, or the quality of work, or the amount of hours, or the quantity, or the productivity that is needed for this job, considering the conditions and the requirements to keep that job, don't necessarily match the pay, don't necessarily match the benefits. So it's disingenuous to sit here and say all the time that, these foreigners are taking jobs that Americans don't want. Not saying that we don't need foreigners. They make America great, especially when you're talking about food, culture, music, work ethic, diversity is always good. Studies have shown diversity benefits organizations, benefits businesses, education, in, many aspects. But at the same time, when you have just recently an 18% rise in homelessness in America within the past year or so, and then we want to sit here and exploit others while we're also at the same time exploiting Americans, it becomes an issue in my book.
Reform. And if you don't see that, either you don't understand what's happening or you're not being truthful. So let's talk about where you think there is room for reform.
Well, Neil is largely right on the need for reform. I have a bipartisan bill, which we introduced with former Representative David Brat. Today, Paul Gosar, Frank Pallone, and I are on it. And basically, it would say you can't underpay these H-1B folks coming in. And you shouldn't have lower skilled things that could be done by American workers. You shouldn't have that kind of category in the United States. It shouldn't be for accountants or entry-level IT jobs. It should really be for exceptional talent. And we can have that balance. And I hope President Trump actually looks at that bipartisan bill that would reform this. But, Senator Schmidt said that America's towns have been hollowed out, and he's absolutely right. And workers have gotten a raw deal because jobs have been offshored. Let's just be honest about this.
But I don't think that Ro Kahnna had anything to do with the jobs leaving. But you have to look at what politicians over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years did send our jobs overseas. That's another topic for a different day. But
this H-1B program. We're talking about 85,000 people. Sometimes it goes up to 200,000 because there are too many exemptions. But the real challenge in America is, how did we lose steel? How did we lose aluminum? How did we allow for deindustrialization? You want to bring back new jobs, you need to have the investment in reindustrialization of America in places left out. And that's what we should be talking about.
Okay, so with Elon and Vivek are not talking about this H-1B visa program and getting into these epic fights on social media, they're now about the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, as people are calling it. Where do you think you or other Democrats could work with them on cutting government waste?
Well, I've gotten some criticism on my side because I said I'm open to working to cut programs that are not competitive. For example, the defense budget, 56% of discretionary budget, it's dominated by five primes. And Musk is saying that maybe we can disrupt that, have new competition so that we actually have a better national security strategy without all of the waste. If there are real proposals to do that, then Democrats should work with him. If there are actually duplicative agencies that aren't efficient on taxpayer dollars, then we should work with him. What I will not do is support any cuts to Social Security, any cuts to Medicare, any cuts to veteran benefits, any cuts to education programs that parents rely on. But there
And I completely agree with him on that entire statement. We may later on review a documentary based on military spending. It's a little bit of an older documentary, but it just kind of shows a lot of the waste that has taken place by the Defense Department and the defense contracts. But I totally agree. Social Security was one of the things that helped get us out of the Great Depression. It is one of the things to make sure that we don't have a lot of, elderly people just, being fucked up here out here in these streets. And I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it's not as grave as it would be if Social Security didn't exist. Um, I understand that Medicaid and Medicare are big programs that need to be funded, especially when you're talking about kids and the elderly. Definitely do not touch, veterans benefits. Like, you know, I might not necessarily agree with a politician's war, but I do know that a lot of these young men and women are signing up. They're risking their fucking life. You know, they're they're watching tragedies happen and take place. All in the name, all in the I'm not gonna say name, but all in the belief of protecting America, protecting our freedoms. And you go fight these wars, you come home, it's almost, it's ridiculous the loops you have to go through to get some kind of, medical treatment, to get, maybe a job or education. And I mean, it's just when you hear some of these stories, it's fucking absurd. Um, and totally with education, you know, we can't sit here and strive to be the best when every time that we're re-ranked amongst other countries, we keep dipping lower and lower in the ranking for education. Most there's a lot of kids, and I'll probably say most, and adults included, that are not on reading level, um, arithmetic. And I mean, it's sad to watch grown adults and kids not being able to, read books, not being able to complete sentences, um, to write complete sentences, and it's just crazy.
there is no doubt that there's waste, and where there is waste, we should work at putting the country first.
So let's get back to your reflections. You wrote some tough truths to your party after the loss in November of the White House, House, and Senate. You said essentially they weren't listening to people where they are suffering pain. You said you got to get to common sense on things like crime and safety and those kinds of issues. How has your analysis been received internally? Do you feel like Democrats have a path forward?
Absolutely, we have a path forward, but we need generational change. Look, people are upset with the system. They're upset that too many.
Um, I do think that the Democrats could have a path forward, um, if there was like some kind of Donald Trump of the left to come out, an outsider, somebody who knows how to use the bully pulpit, somebody who has a backbone, some fucking cojones, some fucking balls, um, who has the ability to be, sweet and sour, Sour Patch Kid. But the reality is, I mean, that is not anyone that I see in the Democratic Party currently. So I don't know if they do have a path forward. Um, I think one of the big one of the biggest critiques of Obama was that he wasn't strong enough. And in a lot of ways, I don't think that he wanted to be strong enough. He wanted to be tough enough. He wanted to be gritty enough. I think he wanted to use the whole, well, I'm a black man. I don't want to give, white America, this perception of being the angry black man, da da da. But I think that when you're talking about coming out of the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, hold on one second.
How many billionaires?
Um, but coming out of the financial crisis, America was ready for hope. They were ready for change, especially when you look at 2008, 2012 with his campaign. But the reality is he wanted to shift the blame to Congress to empower, his corporate buddies. That's the reason why you see that he gets these high, high paid ticket engagement fees from corporations. He's, hanging out with the uber wealthy, the Richard Branson, da 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 da. And I don't think that it wasn't that Obama wasn't tough enough, but I just think that he chose not to. But neither here or there, they're going to have some kind of Donald Trump, Barack Obama, just somebody just moving up the ranks, a firebrand, a game changer. Because if not, then, of course, unless Trump fucks up the economy, it's a possibility for a Trump Jr. It's a possibility for a JD Vance, a Vivek Ramaswamy. I've obviously that um, Elon Musk most likely can't run because he wasn't born here, and of course, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, he wasn't born here, but he was also trying to work out the legalities of it. I don't know how far he got with it, and what decisions were made, but you know, I don't think they have a path forward. That's what I'm really trying to say. I think that maybe somebody like Ro Kahanna could run, but uh, it still kind of comes with the tough factor. Are you willing to beat down not only on your party, the opposing party, and you're the president, you are the leader of the free world. Can you, stand toe to toe with other world leaders? So, I think the toughness is a big thing and the ability to use the bully pulpit for the right reason.
Are spending money on our elections. They're upset that politicians offshore jobs and lost industry for decades. They're upset that health care is being denied to too many Americans. And while this is going on, you have some of the people in our party who have been in Congress for 20, 30 years, and they're not change agents. We need a new generation to step up. We need people who were part of the failed status quo to step aside. And I think the vibrancy of the House Democratic Caucus, where you have new generational leaders and some in the Senate, is what's going to revitalize this party.
So there was a piece in the Hill as you get ready to come back here, swearing in the new Congress, got to elect a speaker, do all of these things. This piece in the Hill by two attorneys said that Congress needs to block President Trump from being certified as the winner. They said Democrats need to take a stand against electoral college votes for a person disqualified by the Constitution from holding office, and they have arguments about that.
Um, I don't think that's really a good idea. There's a lot of reasons why I don't think that's a great idea. I don't even think that's a good idea. I don't. I wouldn't recommend it. I know a lot of the people on the left are going to come for me, but you're talking about millions of people either sitting out on the Democratic Party and not voting for Kamala Harris. Somehow she's missing, roughly approximately 10 million votes compared to Biden in 2020. So that means that either that means that a lot of people chose to sit out. Then you have other people switching their votes to Trump because the economy is just in trash. is they switched the definition of a recession in 2022. Truly, if you really look at the numbers, the only reason why the GDP is even doing okay right now is because they are printing so much debt. Hold on one second. But you have Big Lots going out of business right now. You have Badcock that just went out of business. You have a lot of major layoffs. It's not looking too good for Chrysler, Mopar, Dodge, and Jeep. It's all roughly the same brand. Um, it's not really looking good for a lot of these automakers. They have too many cars not being sold. It's not looking for D.R. Horton and Lennar Homes. There's a lot of new builds that haven't made it to the market yet. There's a lot of new builds on the market that's not being sold. Um, so what I'm trying to get at is chances are we're in these recessionary times, possibly depressionary times. And, if people's pockets are hurting, they're looking for change, you know, whether or not it's true or not, you're talking to people who felt that during Donald Trump's first presidency that their pockets were all swole, and now it's not. And you're also talking about the fact that Barack Obama didn't really do nothing besides give out Obama phones in the 2008 recession, and here you had Donald Trump at least pausing a lot of the mortgages, giving money for rent, giving he upped unemployment, the benefits, extended it. There was just a lot of things that he did during the recession, of during the beer flu, and then here you're talking about stopping the certification, and like literally that's almost the opposite end of what the left has been arguing for the past 4 years about you know the Jan 6. So you're gonna talk about stopping it. I don't think it's gonna end well. You could easily see a real clash. You could really see a complete disrupt in the entire American system if people don't get their way. Um, and that's on both sides, of course, but especially with the people who felt like they had to put up with Joe Biden and his shenanigans and his BS and his economic woes for the past 4 years, especially when you're talking about inflation and unemployment rising, and even if they're cooking the books for unemployment, da da da. I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, of course, they're going to try to use the 14th Amendment and da 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 da, but
No less is required by their oath to support and defend the Constitution. Now, in 2016, a number of Democrats did push back against certifying the first win by President Trump. What do you expect this time around?
We're going to certify the election. I plan to show up to the inauguration. It's not about President Trump. It's about honoring the American people. And we've got to get past this thing that everything has to be partisan. When I put forward a proposal of common sense on H-1B reform, I had people on my side saying, why are you doing that, Ro? Let the Republicans fight. Let them destroy each other fighting. That's the wrong approach. We're Americans first. We've got to be solution-oriented. The American people just elected Donald Trump. I worked my heart out to oppose him. I went to every state, but we lost the election. We respect the American people, and now let's think about how we have a better message going forward.
All right, so let me get you to respond then to Jen Rubin, who writes an opinion column over at the Washington Post. She says Democrats should not try to find common ground with Trump. She says a depressingly high number of elected Democrats are declaring their intent to find, quote, common ground with President-elect Donald Trump and his, as she calls it, crackpot cabinet picks. Their naive, tone-deaf declarations epitomize an infatuation with bipartisanship for bipartisanship's sake. She says you shouldn't be doing it. Your response?
We need to look at it issue by issue. No one is saying that we should work with Republicans or Donald Trump if there's any proposal to cut Social Security, or if there is a proposal to politicize the Justice Department, or if there is a proposal to abolish the Department of Education. Of course, Democrats will oppose that with our values. But if the president has actually a good idea to bring manufacturing back, or to cut wasteful defense spending, or to make our food system safer and get the additives out of our food, why wouldn't we want to work on things that are good for the American people? This is the part of politics that folks are sick about, that we're always looking at things from a partisan lens as opposed to what's good for America. And what they want actually is change agents on the Republican side and the Democratic side.
Yeah, our numbers showed people desperately want to change in big numbers. More than 80% say.
Honestly, I'll take some of what I was saying about Ro back. If he does have an ability to kind of toughen up, I would like to actually see Ro in the Democratic Party primary in 2028. You know, that's assuming that he's not cheated, like how Bernie was cheated. If you don't think that is true, just watch the Vice documentary called The Bernie Blackout. But after watching this and after watching some other videos, even if I don't support the Democratic Party, I would like to see somebody like Ro Kahanna, if not Ro Kahanna, potentially, lead in the primaries, or, not get cheated in the Democratic primaries in 2028. I think it'll be good for not only for the Democratic Party, but I think it'll be good for the Republican Party to bring up more populist, America First, agenda-oriented policies. And the reality is, I don't care is who is writing the legislation to support America. Um, I just think it needs to be done. I mean, honestly, if Donald Trump, you know, is able to, maneuver the Republican Party as a whole to really do an America First, true America First agenda, I'm going to support it. But at the same time, I do know that the Democratic Party, this is not the Democratic Party of FDR, but a lot of the things that, you know, um, this is not the party of John F. Kennedy either, but this is definitely, Ro Kahanna is definitely presenting some great ideas. He's definitely presenting some sensibility that we haven't seen in the Democratic Party in a very long time. So, kudos to him. I do kind of take some of that back, but I do think that he needs to kind of toughen up and, definitely utilize that bully pulpit, especially not just for against the Republican Party, but for also his party. But, I think it'd be good for America. It'd be good for the Republican Party too. Some real competition. That's what we like to see.
Saying they wanted complete upheaval or significant change. So there's definitely a theme there. All right, Congressman, we'll see you back here in the new year. Thank you always for your time, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm
Brian
y'all.
Kilmeade.
And I'm
Well,
Ainsley Earhart. And click
Happy
here.
New Year. We're gonna be back soon with more updates. Peace.